Today we're going to talk about Workbook 2A Exercise 8, and we'll look at the pages 22 through 24 in the textbook. Start thinking about adding and subtracting. When you think about the word adding, think about taking two parts, add them together, and when you do, you get the whole value. Subtraction is when you take a whole thing, you subtract one part, and you find the other part. So think about numbers that way. Addition is taking two parts, putting them together. We often use the word all together, and that gives us a whole number. And subtracting is taking it and breaking it into two different parts again. Take the whole thing, take away one part, and you'll have the other part left. Look at page 22 and 23 in your book. It starts with a problem that says that Ollie has 8 cars, David has 6 cars. How many cars do they have all together? That's taking the part of the cars that Ollie has and the part of the cars that David has, putting them all together and finding out that 8 plus 6 is 14. They have 14 cars all together. Now, maybe you're thinking about how do you add those. Of course, you can always think about numbers in a line like this. And if I start with the number 8 and I want to add 6, then I'm going to jump up 6 numbers. And when I get to the 6th number, I'm at the number 14. So 8 plus 6 is 14. If you did Singapore math last year, you might remember that we think a lot about tens, and when we add 8 plus 6, we might think about the fact that 8 needs 2 to make a 10, and 6 is 2 and 4. So together, the 8 and 2 is 10, and I have 4 ones for the number 14. That's another good way to add. Right now, what we're mostly trying to do is recognize that these words tell us to add, because all together we have 14 cars, but we could take the same information and say it the other way around. They have 14 cars all together, and Ollie has 8. How many does David have? That problem is cluing you in to the fact that you're going to do subtraction, because you know the whole, 14, you know the part that Ollie has, 8, and you're trying to find the amount that David has. And of course the answer would be 6. Look at the bottom of that page, page 23. They have a lovely picture of ducks. If you've been with me very long, you know that I don't draw very well, so I drew triangles. But there are 7 ducks on the left side of that oval, and there are 5 ducks on the right side of that oval. And we can think about those in terms of problems and numbers. We could look at those and put them together and start with these 7. If you have 7 and you add 5 more, from 7 we could count 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, and say that if you start with 7 and you add 5, we get 12. Or we could say if we start with 5 and then add 7, after 5 is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. If I start with 5 and I add 7, I also get the number 12. If I start with a whole group of 12 and I get rid of 5 of them, what I have left is 7. And of course, if I start with all 12 and I get rid of 7, what I have left is 5. So starting with the whole and getting rid of one part leaves me with the other part. Always think about 2 parts come together to make the whole thing, and if you take the entire thing and lose one part, then you end up with the other part. And so if you turn to page 24, you find that that's exactly how it shows it. Think of the number 12 as being the whole, and that could be broken down into the part of 9 and the part of 3. Now there's a lot of other ways you could break down 12, but this time they've chosen to use 9 and 3. You could use a lot of numbers to break down 12, and there's not one way that's better, just this time we're using 9 and 3. And so if you think about the fact that from that, we call them number bonds, from that number bond of 9, 3, and 12, you can make 4 math sentences. Because if you add the two parts, 9 plus 3, you get 12. If you add them in the other order, 3 plus 9, you still get 12. If you take the whole thing 12 and you you subtract the part that is 3, you'll have the other part left, that's 9. If you start with the whole thing 12 and you get rid of the part that is 9, you'll have the other part left, which is 3. That's all we have to understand to do exercise 8.